All right, our next section is titled Lenin and the Bolsheviks. And let's start, if we can, by taking a look at some of the key figures, some of the key historical figures that you should really know about this movement. And the first guy we're going to talk about is Lenin. It's Vladimir Lenin. Lenin was a Marxist socialist. If you remember, Karl Marx pushed the idea of a violent revolution of the workers against the business owners. He was born in Russia and educated in Russia. In 1887, when he was 17, his brother was executed by the Russian government for being part of an attempted assassination against Russian Tsar Nicholas III. Look, you want to make someone radical, you execute their brother. That's one of the first signs that you could radicalize this person is if you kill their older brother. He then became a lawyer. He was a smart guy and started pushing some of his more radical ideas during this period. And he was exiled to Siberia. Now, Siberia is the far east of Russia. It's the frozen tundra. It's the cold part of the country. And historically, Russians would send their worst criminals to Siberia. So he went to jail in Siberia. He eventually, when he was released from prison, he was exiled. They kicked him out of the country and sent him to live in the rest of Europe. He lived from 1900 to 1907. He lived in Germany and Switzerland, but traveled all around Europe and got to know, got in good with other groups of Marxist socialists. In 1902, he met Leon Trotsky in London. Leon Trotsky will be his right-hand man during the Russian Revolution, but not at first, actually. We're going to find out that Trotsky kind of breaks apart from him. Let's do Trotsky in a second. In 1917, though, as Russia is having its problems, its own issues, and Tsar Nicholas, of course, was told to step down. The provisional government steps in, and the Germans saw an opportunity to weaken Russia. Remember, Russia is still fighting Germany in World War I during this point. So Russia said, "How can I weaken my enemy? I know. Let's send back this Russian who is living here now with us, and have him cause trouble in his homeland, disrupt." So now we'll go to Trotsky. Trotsky was born a Ukrainian Jew, and he came from a rich family. But Ukraine was part of Russia at the point. So although he was kind of in a different region of Russia, it's Russia. So here's a Russian Jew from a rich family. And he also was a radical Marxist socialist, also was jailed in Siberia. And when he left jail for organizing and pushing ideas of Marxist socialism in Russia, they sent him to Europe, to the rest of Europe, where he got in with the same circle of people that Lenin was in with. They actually met in 1902 in London. We said this, but there was a split in 1905, and Trotsky is going to go against Lenin and his ideas in these Marxist, socialist, communist groups that existed in Europe during the period. And he's going to team with another guy, another Russian, who the two of them, along with others, go back to Russia, where they're going to try and foment revolution. Remember in 1905, in Russia, is Bloody Sunday. This is the day that the soldiers turned their guns on the peaceful protesters in St. Petersburg. And what we didn't get into before is that there's actually an attempted revolution at this point, which doesn't work, but leaves Tsar Nicholas kind of scared and uncomfortable to the point that he allows Russia to go from being a historic um, dictatorship where the czars ruled with absolute power to a constitutional monarchy where he actually has a constitution written up. He allows for a strengthening of their historic legislative body, the Duma, which was made up of rich, aristocratic, noble types. Um, but he does make a change in the government after this attempted revolution, led in part by Trotsky in 1905, and then they exile him again. Okay, well he comes back, and he comes back to St. Petersburg or Petrograd at the time. Maybe it was St. Petersburg at the time. I'm not sure. The city changed its name, has become Leningrad, and it comes back to St. Petersburg. It was officially named after Peter the Great. Warm water port. I don't know if you remember. But anyways, he becomes the leader of the Soviet, which is basically a town hall. I discussed this in an earlier lecture, how these Soviets were town halls where the working class people and ex-soldiers and other peasants, just regular people, could meet and could try and have a voice in government. So he goes on to become the leader of the Petrograd or the Soviet in Petrograd. Now, this Bolshevik or this Soviet is ruled by a group called the Bolsheviks, which Trotsky is going to become the leader of. And the Bolsheviks were Marxist socialists. They wanted violent revolution of the workers against the upper class and a redistribution of wealth. They wanted to redistribute land. So they wanted to take land from the rich and give it to the poor, to the peasants. And he becomes the leader. In 1917, when Lenin is sent back to Russia from Germany, where he had been for 17 years, he bumps into Trotsky again. And they become buddies and they become a team. And they decide that they're going to work from Petrograd, from the Soviet in Petrograd, to try and start this revolution where they were going to push Marxist socialism on the people of Russia. They were going to have a violent revolution, right? This was it. This was the culmination of Karl Marx's ideas. And just real quickly, because you guys know I'm kind of big on this whole thing. Here's a picture from the Soviet in Petrograd. Here is here is Trotsky, right? You can see Trotsky here, and here's Lenin. So some great historic pictures. By the way, this is a symbol that the Bolsheviks took. Look familiar? The old hammer and sickle. That's going to be part of the Russian flag, the Soviet flag of the old Soviet Union. That's going to start in this era and is going to stick around until 1990, 1991. Is going to be the second most powerful country in the world for 45 plus years after World War II. Yeah, this might look familiar. We're starting to get to an era, an era when I was alive. I know you guys weren't, but maybe your parents were. You can have these conversations and maybe relate to your studies. But yeah, so here now we see the formation of what's going to become a superpower country. And over the next 30 years, we're going to figure out, we're going to trace, we're going to find out exactly how that happened, how Russia or the Soviet Union was flipped, how it became an incredible superpower, only rivaled by the US, and the long-term impacts of that.